And so we kind of have an idea of, okay, we get this, we know this is important, we can kind of see this is definitely going to be a lucrative area and what kind of a really valuable place that we have in this, but we got to understand a little bit more. We have to understand the players. So first we have to kind of understand our own role in this whole big scheme of things. Well, who is the taxpayer representative, and what role do we have? First, we have to have authority. We're going to talk a lot about authority here in a little bit. We have to have authority to represent the taxpayer. We are covered under something called Circular 230. Now, you may have heard of this many times over, so I'm going to touch on it a few more times, but Circular 230 is like the governing document for us. Section 10.3 means there are a certain class of folks that have unlimited authority. We can represent the taxpayer top and bottom, up and down. We can do everything for them. Who are these folks? Attorneys, CPAs, and EAs. All three of these have unlimited practice authority, well, with the exception, as long as they're not under suspension or disbarment, so that's the only exception in there. We have unlimited authority in those three categories. You have other ones that have a little limited. They can do some things, but not everything. They're enrolled actuaries, enrolled retirement plan agents, or registered tax return preparers. They are limited only to specific areas of practice. For example, the registered return preparers can only prepare a return or claim for refund, or represent in an audit only if it's a return they have prepared. If it's not a return they prepared, they don't have any authority to help represent in that case. So these folks have some authority, but it's not unlimited like the Circular 230 practitioners, the attorneys, CPAs, and EAs. There are some other ones that have some limited right, as long as they can prove, ID or proof of authority. Maybe a family member or an immediate family member, a regular full-time employee of an employer. Some of these folks have some ability to help. A general partner, an officer, maybe some sort of full-time employee of an entity. They're going to have some ability, as long as they can prove their identity. There is, if I look and say, here's some resources for you, I wanted to throw these in here. We're just talking right on the surface right now as to who are representatives. And there is a definite difference between limited and unlimited authority. So I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of flavor of that. But if you want to look at these, and I highly encourage it, there are a lot of great resources. Circular 230 is our kind of overriding document. We're going to touch on a few important things as we go on through the course in Circular 230. But what if you wanted limited practice and you're not really one of those unlimited folks? What could you do? There's a publication 470 that explains some of that authority and explains practice before the IRS. These are really great reading items if you want to know a little bit more about authority and what you can do in representing taxpayers. So we kind of have a little bit of a picture. Folks that maybe want to represent a taxpayer have different kinds of authority, but we got to understand who our IRS representatives are. Who are the agents, the folks that we're working with, so that we understand their titles and what their roles are. So that's going to be an important aspect that we're going to touch on here next. If we look at IRS representatives, you can kind of first start thinking of it in big boxes and say, okay, we have different arenas that they do. We have IRS representatives that work in the area of examination. So they're going to look at examining returns and auditing, etc. We have those who, once there's a balance owing, they have to work in the collection arena. So we'll talk about those representatives. There's a whole separate division or a whole separate arena of the ones that do criminal investigations, ones that deal with litigation, and then some other ones. So these are kind of our main categories of representatives we're going to hit on in the next few minutes here. So going into each of those, we're going to first look at examination. Well, we're going to look at tax examiners first. So we're going to kind of look at the low level, if it, not to say that they aren't a valuable resource. We're going to look at like the different tiers of agents. So the tax examiners, they're normally campus compliant personnel. They're not accountants. They have limited knowledge usually in tax law or accounting, and they handle just very specific limited issues within exams they handle. So what kind of things are they doing? Maybe document matching audits, correspondence audits, very simplistic type of audits, and they work within the service centers. So that's one area that we call tax examiners. You might have another little level up. These are tax compliance officers. They're compliance personnel. Again, these folks are not accountants. They don't have those kind of degrees most often, and they're doing office examinations on a selected business or individual. They may deal with more complex tax issues, but they have to have permission in order to expand an audit into another open year. So they do a little more, they deal with a little more complex issues, but they don't have a lot of power. This next level, though, the revenue agent, these guys, they're definitely the next level up. They normally have at least 30 semester hours of accounting they've taken of their own education. Many of them have possibly an accounting degree. They are definitely more experienced and well-trained than those other two levels we just touched on. What they do normally is conduct field audits. So they're out there in the field conducting audits. But these audits from the revenue agents are the ones that result in the most occurrences of additional tax. They are specially trained to test for unreported income, and they have authority and power. They can expand the audit to open years as appropriate and necessary. So these are like kind of moving up the food chain. You can kind of think of it like. The next level up, we have specialty agents. Now, I want to stop right here and say, please don't confuse this with special agents that we'll talk about next, but specialty agents. These are employees that assist with exam in a specialized area. They have special training or education, and they have even little divisions. Somebody who's maybe a valuation expert. Maybe they have to go to somebody like, oh, you know how to value antique artwork within the IRS. Well, they might go to that specialty agent. Somebody that deals with international exams or pension trusts, excise tax. They actually have employment tax agents that are specialty agents now and trained in that area. They might even go to consultants for advice in certain audit situations, something that's kind of out of their realm. So those are specialty agents. The next level that I want to mention is one that is called the appeals officers. Now, the appeals officers, this is like the highest level of the food chain in the examination world. They usually have college degrees, and many of them could even be CPAs or attorneys. They generally have the highest level of technical training available in the IRS, and they're better informed about tax laws and administration than employees or agents, even like the revenue agents that initially examine the return. These are like the highest level. They have the ability to kind of look at the whole picture and go, oh yeah, okay, well, here's really the technical information that they need to have available. So it's thinking of the different levels. Each one of these may be one that you encounter in the examination area of the IRS, but being familiar with them, what the titles are, what their powers are, is an important aspect of being a good representative. As we move over and say, okay, what about collections? Collections is another area, another arena of the IRS. So in the collection, it works similar. You may have, okay, what's kind of our starting level? If you're dealing with ACS, which by the way means Automated Collection Service, these are the folks that when you call collections, they're the phone support agents. These guys only have the case during the time you're on the phone with them. They are never assigned that case. They can't ever really go back to that case. And they're limited in their knowledge areas. But they are the phone support personnel, the customer service personnel from just when you call collections. They still have ability to help in a wide variety of areas, but well, what's that next level up? Sometimes there are certain reasons you have to go to that next tier up. It's the revenue officer, or RO, you'll see it abbreviated. They obviously specialize in collection. So what really is collection? We think collection of money, which is entirely correct. They collect liabilities, but they also collect missing returns. That's one of their jobs. They collect missing returns, they collect liabilities. A revenue officer definitely may be used in an employment tax examination. That's one of their arenas. They're a little more specialty trained, and they're able to do a lot more and make determinations. They have more power than a ACS customer service person. What's that next level up from there? It's the same idea if you're in appeals. We just use two different terms, by the way, if you're in exam or if you're in collection. So your settlement officer, that is the person that, again, they are normally the highest trained. They could be a CPA or attorney. They usually have college degrees. They definitely have the highest level of training or experience in the IRS compared to the levels below them in collections. And they work with collection issues, but they're interested in closing the case expediently. So here we are in dealing with appeals. We're dealing with a settlement officer. They're great, highly trained, but sometimes they have even more flexibility because their goal is to try to collect that case expediently. So, to close it. That's really kind of the settlement officer's goal and one of the reasons that they are to do that. We have another arena in collection, if you think about it, something called an offer specialist or an offer agent. Now, these folks normally will work out of Holtzville, New York, or Memphis, Tennessee. Sometimes they get sent out to the field, but their job is to review offers and compromise. So this is a very specialty area of collection. Their job is to determine if they should be accepted or rejected or returned as far as that offer and compromise is concerned. So these are all different types of agents so that you are like, oh, hey, I know what an RO is. I know what an RA is, because you know which division you're dealing in, and kind of a little familiarity there as to what their experience and their powers are. As we look at another area that hopefully you don't have to deal in too much, but criminal investigations, here's a whole nother area. Now these guys are called special agents. Special agents have law enforcement powers. They do carry guns and badges. And I have a little warning here. I want to just tell you, be very concerned. If you have an actual special agent visit you or your client, this is a big red flag of something really bad's going on. Here's what happens to you as a representative. Just as a side note, privilege disappears entirely in criminal matters. And we'll talk about privilege later on in this course or in the part 2. But here's what really happens. If you're, let's say, a CPA, you're an enrolled agent, you're not an attorney, you're going to need an attorney in this case, because what you will normally do is something called a Covell letter. Covell comes from the case, the United States versus Covell, back in 1961. What you're doing in that case is you are basically hired by the attorney, you work for the attorney, you bill the attorney, you're no longer working for the client, because then it's under that attorney privilege umbrella. And my only caution here, whenever you are possibly dealing with criminal investigations, dealing with that special agent, you might want to proceed with caution, and you might even want to discuss your own attorney if you're concerned about practitioner penalties or other issues coming about. So this is another division. It's just one of those, being knowledgeable about the level of personnel you're dealing with tells you a lot about what you can and can't do in a case. As we look at another area here we go. We have for litigation, we have a whole another arena of folks in the IRS that work primarily with U.S. tax court. So if you're not really dealing in the tax court arena, you may not deal with this, but it's good to know, again, what is this person called? What is their job duty? There's something called area counsel. Now, they were formerly known as district counsel, but they're attorneys. Most often they're very trained. They're involved normally in IRS litigation, but they also provide technical advice to other IRS agents. So there could be, let's say, a revenue officer that is stuck on a legal technical issue. They may reach out to area counsel and get that legal technical advice they need. They definitely have the job duty of including what occurs within the U.S. tax court. That's definitely within area counsel's arena or umbrella. But to know that they do the IRS litigation side of, whenever a person goes to tax court, who's on the other side of the fence, U.S. versus, that U.S., it's the area counsel folks that are out there doing that. What other areas of, folks are you dealing with? Well, there are the taxpayer advocate, or taxpayer advocate service is what TAS, or you may see those abbreviations. What exactly is that? What is their job duties? Who is a taxpayer advocate? Their job is to assist a taxpayer to resolve problems with the IRS, and they have a bigger duty. They're supposed to look for systemic problems. Like, okay, we're seeing for some reason this is continuing to be an issue or that's an issue. They can bring those issues and recommend changes and try to fix those issues. Their job is actually to report to Congress. They are created by Congress. So they exist really apart from the IRS, and they have some duties and jobs. They have great powers as well. They can go ahead and order the IRS to do something. Say, okay, this is broken, you're harming the taxpayer, you will do this. So that's one of the things the taxpayer advocate folks can do. How do you get one of these? Well, there's the Form 911, I think appropriately named Form 911, or you can call in, but it's basically where we go when the system's broken. You are obligated to try to go through the system and work through it, but when it doesn't work or a taxpayer is really going to be harmed, well, then we can do a 911.